Hey guys, it's Mr. Goosens here. We are going to be going over some video lecture notes for the rise of organized labor. Before we get to it though, I'm going to show you where to access that in Google Classroom. So if you go to Google Classroom, this will be posted, it'll be Rise of Organized Labor lecture notes. You can take notes digitally or on the paper handout. I'll hand that paper out and you can go ahead and click on this link. It will show you a screen like this. You will make your own copy, which will then look like this, and you can double click these blanks, then type in whatever you would like. Hopefully it's the right answer, which I'll be going through. You can pause and access it and write it down as necessary. So let's go ahead and get started. Again, this is the rise of organized labor. This is kind of the similar time period in which we've already been talking about. The first thing that we're going to get to is you need to know some background about the factors of production. So what does it take in order to produce something, a product? The computer that you're watching this on or the phone that you have has the factors of production that went into it. First was land. There was natural resources. Your phone has cobalt in it, which was highly sought after, and most of the world's reserves are in Africa, and that's why the phone makers and the governments are trying to establish partnerships in Africa currently. The next is labor. That's the human effort portion of it. You need people, whether it's physical labor or mental labor, either way, human effort needs to happen in order to create a product. And then you need capital. That is investment money. It's hard to make money without money. I mean, it's possible, but you do need some sort of starting cash, right? So you need to be able to buy the land. You need to be able to pay your workers in order to produce a product. So that is blanks 1, 2, and 3. So make sure you get those down. As I said, you can pause as necessary. So I'm going to be going through this pretty quickly, but pause as much as you need. Who owns the product? So we live in a capitalistic society. In capitalism, a capitalist owns the means of production and has the primary right to the profits. And then workers are paid wages. So if you go work at, let's use the example of Starbucks. The baristas are workers and they are paid wages, hourly wages. The owner has the rights to the profit. So whatever money they make on top of all their expenses, they get the right to do with what they want. Whether they reinvest that or they put it into their own pockets is up to them. In socialism, workers own the means of production and share the profits that come from their labor. So in socialism, there's not one owner or capitalist. The workers own the means of production and share it with each other that come from the labor. These are both isms, which means they are both theories. There is not one society on earth that is pure capitalist or pure socialist. It's in practice, it's never been able to have 100% one or the other. So is compromise possible during this time period? Remember, we're looking back at the U.S. history. So is compromise possible so that we can have a little bit of both? So some combinations that we need to talk about are trusts. So trusts are combinations of businessmen designed to maximize profits. And there are laws against trusts getting too big. Some famous examples of trusts are the oil and the steel industry back in the day. Now there's more like media or even the gaming. So like Microsoft and Blizzard I can't remember if that deal actually went through or not, but I believe it did. But I think it was thrown out by the courts so that certain gaming industries, certain companies can't have too much power. Then there's unions. These are combinations of workers designed to, one, increase wages, two, decrease the amount of hours worked, and three, improve the working conditions. So during this time period, actually, people worked for a lot of hours throughout the day. So they decreased it. There was paid for very, very little, and the working conditions were bleak, were not so great. Both trusts and labor unions drive up prices for the consumers. So the consumers end up paying for all these types of combinations. However, if you are a consumer, you're most likely either in a trust or part of a union, or at least if you're not part of a union, you benefit from the union's work to make sure that labor laws are set in place. So even if you are a consumer, even if you have to pay more for your phone or whatever other product, food that you get, the Starbucks drink that you have, um, those prices go up, but you are also protected in your own line of work. So, labor versus capital. How do we challenge these guys? So, if you're a bowling fan, that's a strike, getting all the pins down, and that is one of the ways that you challenge the people who own the capitalists. So, strikes. Strikes are work stoppages, which are the primary tools that labor unions use to get what they want. If they don't like what is happening with the management, then they stop work, and then the company doesn't make money, and the companies want to make money, and so they'll probably do what the unions want. That's off actually happened not that long ago with a lot of the stuff happening at the ports, a lot of the dock workers and whatnot. They were stopping their work, and that's why we couldn't get certain types of products to stores, which then rose prices. So, breaking strikes. Employers had a lot of tools they used to break those strikes. We're going to take a look at some of those tactics. One were lockouts. They would just then lock everybody out and be like, okay, we're going to last longer than you guys. You guys need money, and we're not going to get paid for not working. So we'll just close the company down for a little bit. They're going to outlast the workers. That's what that tactic is. Then there's scabs, replacement workers. Even though the replacement workers are going to be less skilled, they're not going to be as efficient as the normal workers. They can still at least run the factory to make the products. Then there are yellow dog contracts. The company, this is like a preemptive thing. This is not a reactive thing. They are trying to get workers to not join a union. Blacklists. If you are on the blacklist, I'm sure you've heard that term before, that means you're not getting in. You're not going to be allowed to work in the industry that you have skills for. And then there are Pinkertons. They would basically, like private contractors, work as security. They were detectives. They would try to find the labor unions and sneak into them and try to figure out what's going on so they can report back to management. So here's the example: Pinkerton National Detective Agency. We never sleep. They got their eye out. All right, so because of all this, during this time period, 1877 to 1894, there was a lot of different instances of violence happening around the nation, specifically when it comes to certain industries, but a lot of the products that were going around the nation were being transported by railroad. So there was the first one, the Great Railroad Strike in 1877. So there was a 45-day strike with the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad. There was a lot of wage cuts, and so because of those wages being cut, the workers decided to strike. Um, and what they had to do was they had to send in federal military intervention. That means like the national government sent in military personnel to stop the violence, stop the strikers in their tracks because of the Commerce Clause. They said they can send these federal military police in because this industry affected multiple states, not just one state. And so, because of that, in the Constitution, the president and his administration was able to um, basically break up the strike happening. And here is an example, a picture of the Maryland National Guard 6th Regiment fighting its way through Baltimore, Maryland on July 20th, 1877, firing into the crowd if they were not dispersing. Then there was the Haymarket Affair, also known as the Haymarket Riot or Massacre. You can see in the picture there, 1886. There was a poster saying for all the workers to meet. They were going to discuss what was going on. You can see it's in multiple languages. There was a lot of immigrants at that time, specifically in Chicago. So they essentially wanted less working hours. They wanted to go down from like a 12, 16, 12, 10-hour workday to an 8-hour workday. So this included German workers, as you can see the bottom portion of the poster. This union that was involved was the Knights of Labor. They had almost 700,000 members at their peak. So they had all these people in support, the 700,000 members. Of course, that was nationwide, but there's a lot of people in Chicago, and there was a bomb that went off. The bomb was planted, and unfortunately, people died over this issue, including Officer Matthias J. Deegan. He was killed in the pipe bomb explosion. They put this in the newspaper. They plastered this all over the place, and to make sure that the labor unions were not liked by the public. So after this, the public opinion, they equated labor unions with communism, with socialism, with anarchism, with all the craziness and violence. The 8 anarchists that were involved in the pipe bombing, or allegedly involved with it, were hanged publicly. The aftermath tarnished the reputation of the Knights of Labor and resulted in a decline in membership. You guys remember just a few moments ago I said there was 700,000 members, and it went down considerably. The Homestead Strike. You guys know what a homestead is. We talked about that previously. So Andrew Carnegie and Henry Clay Frick were the people of note. So Carnegie over Carnegie Steel, which you guys will learn about more a little bit later on. They used lockouts, scabs, and Pinkertons during this. So the Homestead Mill was protected by the McKinley Tariff and Pinkerton Army. This is a political cartoon. It says wanted 4,000 foreign pauper laborers, so meaning low-skilled people who aren't going to want a lot of money for their labor. It says notice to the American workmen, wages are reduced 30%. Because of that, there was a Battle of Homestead, July 6, 1892. The strikers versus the Pinkertons. 16 were killed and 23 wounded. The Pullman strike is next, but we're going to take a look at this guy who was a candidate for one specific reason in the mayor race of New York City about like 10 or 15 years ago. Maybe it was like 15. And he ran on a single issue, one issue the entire time. And that's like a plank issue. So most candidates have any type of political office is going to talk about multiple things like education, uh, foreign policy, immigration, etc. This mayoral candidate was focused on one single thing, and he made it. Even with his haircut and his beard, his facial hair, he looks like he's coming out of like actually 1894. But this was like, I want to say 2010, maybe. So we're going to take a look at this real quick.
Mr. McMillan, would you like 30 seconds more?
Allow me to introduce myself. I represent the rent is too damn high party. People working 8 hours a day and 40 hours a week to some a third job. Women can't afford to take care of their children, feed their children breakfast, lunch, and dinner. My main job is to provide a roof over your head, food on the table, and money in your pocket. This is politics as usual. Playing a silly game, and it's not going to happen. The rent too damn high movement, the people I'm here to represent can't afford to pay their rent. They're being laid off right now as I speak. They can't eat breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Listen, someone's stomach, child's stomach just growled. Did you hear it? You gotta listen like me.
Okay,
let's
Mr.
talk
McMillan.
about the issue.
Mr.
People can't afford
Mr.
to pay their
Cuomo,
rent.
30
Stop.
seconds for you, sir.
Rent is too damn high.
Thank you. There is.
So, pretty interesting guy. He ran for, I apologize, it wasn't mayor of New York City, it was the governor of the state of New York. And actually, the guy that you saw at the end, Cuomo, eventually becomes the governor of New York. But he was talking about the rent is too high. This plays into the Pullman Company and the Pullman strike. So in 1894, there was a company town. What that means is the town was centered around the company. Everything was for the company. It was a kind of a social experiment. The homes were owned by the company. The stores were owned by the company. The schools, the churches, all owned by the company. One of the rules inside that town was that there was no alcohol to be had. The Pullman Railcar Company was the company that owned everything. So if you worked for the company, you got to live in their homes. You would shop at their stores. It was a town totally centered around Pullman, and near Chicago, Illinois. But what happened is that the capitalists got too greedy. The owners of this company got too greedy, and they wanted to lower wages and get more money out of their workers. And so what they did was they would raise the rent. The rent was too high for the wages that they were paying, which doesn't even make sense as an owner of the company, especially if you were trying to establish this company town as a social experiment. So an author who is unknown said this: "We are born in a Pullman house, fed from the Pullman shops, taught in the Pullman school, catechized in the Pullman church, and when we die, we shall go to Pullman hell." So a pretty bleak existence. Imagine like a company like Amazon, where everything is Amazon. You go to Amazon stores, you work in your Amazon job. You can only order from Amazon. You can only Amazon has a lot of cool stuff, but the fact that we have variety is what makes life interesting. So in that company town in 1894, there was the Panic of 1893. Again, wages were lowered, but they kept rent the same. And as you can see in that political cartoon, there's Pullman right here pressing down with the low wages and high rent on the person, squeezing the life out of everybody. And there's Jimmy McMillan again. So Eugene V. Debs was a labor leader, and he was thrown in jail after ignoring a federal order to end the strike. So he was the leader in charge of this, and he was then thrown in jail. He read Karl Marx while in jail. He read the Communist Manifesto, eventually adapting his beliefs to Marxism. And he became a leading socialist and advocate of industrial unionism. There was a court case regarding him. The Supreme Court upheld the federal government's order to end the strike and jail Debs, so it was constitutionally legal according to the Supreme Court of the day. The grounds that they said it was the fact that he messed with the interstate commerce. He messed with the postal service because Pullman train cars were carrying the mail of the time, and it affected the general welfare of the public. So if we go through, I'm just going to quickly go through all of these. The Great Railroad Strike, the Haymarket Affair, Homestead Strike, Pullman Strike, all of these strikes were just a significant turning point in capitalism versus the labor unions. So craft unions versus industrial unions, something that we need to note. Craft unions are organized by trade craft with emphasis on the level of skill required. Industrial unions are basically anyone in a specific industry you can organize without regard to skill or trade. It's just everybody in that industry. So you don't have to prove yourself. You don't have to pass any tests. It's just they want as many people as possible. Eugene V. Debs, again, we come with this guy. He's industrial unionism, socialist labor leader. He is a perennial presidential candidate, which means he's running for president every 4 years. When he was in jail in 1920, he campaigned from jail. However, even though he was in jail, he was very tolerant at the time. He rejected standard socialist and labor platforms that called for racial segregation, which means separating by race. He thinks everybody should get a fair shot at work, and no matter what skin color you were or race, that everybody should be able to have the chance to work and earn a living wage. So here's the political cartoon about Eugene V. Debs running for presidency. Anyhow, there are worse places than a front porch, which refers to his rival's campaign, where the rival would go to the front porch of people and do his speeches, so he would seem more ordinary. The AFL, one of the biggest labor unions of the time in history, is founded in 1886. It was an association of craft unions. Its members were skilled white men only, founded by Samuel Gompers. The bread and butter unionism, that's what their whole thing was a fair day's pay for a fair day's work. They demanded higher wages, less hours, better working conditions, and that's it. So the 8-hour workday came about through the AFL because they wanted 8 hours for work, 8 hours for sleep, and 8 hours for what we will. So whatever you want to do. Human nature as described by Samuel Gompers. Here we have Gompers who wants everything. We have the fat pigs of Congress wanting 50 or worth $50 million, wanting the earth. We have a slightly skinnier pig, but still a fat pig. I want $1 million. This guy's a salary of $5,000 wants an increase. It's still looking like a pig. Then we have the normal worker making $3 a day, wanting a little bit of a raise. And this guy, you can see his clothes are tattered. He's got a shovel. He's an everyday common laborer. He's making $1 a day and wants an increase of 5 or 10 cents a day. So these guys want a lot. These guys want little. Here's the AFL-CIO. In 1955, the AFL merged with the Congress of Industrial Organizations to create the AFL-CIO, which is the largest network of labor unions in the United States today. So we're going to compare and contrast. If you take a look at your notes, we have craft unionism, AFL. The industrial unionism is the Industrial Workers of the World, IWW. Samuel Gompers is the leader. Eugene V. Debs is the leader of the other. Skilled versus skilled and unskilled. Craft unionism was discriminatory, only white men, and industrial unionism, non-discriminatory, included women, minorities, foreigners, what have you. Craft unionism was very nationalistic, nativist. They wanted people who was only born in America. They would not strike during wartime. They believed industrial unionism were not nativists. They were international. They would strike during wartime. They wouldn't care that if America was at war. They still wanted their demands met. Craft unionism would cooperate with capitalism, and industrial unionism advocated socialism, which makes sense since Eugene V. Debs read Karl Marx, Marxism, which is a form of socialism, communism. All right, and there you have it. There are the rest of your notes. Have a good one.